Hey there, crypto traders and investors. It's Rod with the POW Group. Welcome back on the Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ Stocks, crypto assets, news and interviews. Today is Sunday. Hope you're having a great weekend. It's April 27th. And in this video, we're going to do another rapid fire news update, this time for the period April 19th to the 25th. And again, it's just a high level overview in case you missed it. Before we get to it, make sure to smash the like. If you're new, you can subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff. You'll be notified on any future videos. And you can follow us over on X as well. Formerly Twitter handle for that is @GroupPow. Going to be using that as my platform of choice going forward. A lot of news this week, so we'll jump right to it. And again, not financial advice, entertainment purposes only. Just in, pro Bitcoin Paul Atkins officially sworn in as the new SEC chair, and he's got a lot of work ahead of him. He's already been in the SEC before, so we're not, it's not like he needs to get up to speed or anything like that with regards to, just general procedures. He just has to get, I think there was like 70 ETF filings just for crypto alone. And you have to remember that this is bigger than crypto, right? We're talking all the stocks. There's a lot that goes on within the agency, but we know that there's been a lot of regulatory capture, and they've been using the SEC and weaponizing the SEC to hinder this industry. And Paul Atkins did say that over the last 4 years, crypto has been attacked, and it deserves clear rules of the road. But the previous administration, the previous regime at the SEC said, "Oh, there's tons of clarity," right? Which we all knew was BS. They were just trying to slow the industry down, right? They knew they were just gaslighting the general public. And just in, the SEC chairman Paul Atkins says his top priority is to provide a firm regulatory foundation for digital assets. But I thought there was already one. Of course, it's his top priority, but yet we were gaslit for the last 4 years saying that there's already clear rules of the road, right? We have the Howey test. So it's pretty funny at the end of the day, but anybody who doesn't think this was all planned long ago, you're either asleep or extremely naive or gullible. Breaking, XRP is the coin with the most utility. I posted a video on this. The Teucrium CEO basically calling out, maybe he won't be welcome back to mainstream media because he's telling all the secrets that they don't want to tell, but basically saying it's going to have more utility than Bitcoin, right? Of course it is. Bitcoin doesn't do anything. It set out to become a payment network and a peer-to-peer cash system, and it didn't work, right? Now it's a quote-unquote store of value, but XRP is arguably a better store of value because it actually burns a small amount of XRP with every single transaction, something that even Bitcoin doesn't. Also, CME Group expanding crypto derivatives with the launch of XRP futures. So we're seeing a lot of futures get launched at the moment, and that's typical. Typically, the spot ETFs get approved after. And speaking of which, Hashdex has launched the XRP H11, the world's first XRP spot ETF in Brazil. The ETF tracks the NASDAQ XRP reference price index with 95% of its assets allocated to XRP. So when you buy that ETF, or when the public buys it, the issuer of the ETF has to hold that underlying asset. So in this case, it's about 95% of XRP, the underlying asset. Whereas in a futures-based ETF, you don't actually have to hold the underlying asset, right? You're just betting on the price in the future. Also, there's some more information to come with regards to that in just a moment. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy acquires 6,556 Bitcoins additional for 555 million. MSTR stock rebounds. Like I said, this is either going to be really, really good. He's either going to probably become the richest man in the world, or it's going to be really, really bad. Also, Circle launching new payments network for banks. Circle unveiled a new payments and cross-border remittance product. And I've got a lot of questions about this. Like, how does this affect Ripple? What about XRP? Isn't this what they're trying to do? Well, I don't get a lot of questions about, hey, Amazon has a competitor called Google or Apple, or, it's just or Dell, you know what I mean? Like, what's Dell going to do? What are we going to do with this Dell stock, right? We got Apple on the block now, right? This new kid on the block. There's going to be room. We're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars, folks. There's going to be room for multiple players to survive in this space, and not only survive but thrive. And how does the saying go? Imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? So Ripple has been doing this using XRP, the digital asset, not to be conflated with Ripple, the company that was created after XRP. So they've been doing that now for over a decade. They've got over a decade of experience and head start. So, all these other people can come in. Circle is the issuer of USDC stablecoin. So, they can eventually, they're all going to work together, right? It's all of this stuff's going to be interoperable, and we can't just have one company or one crypto project. It needs to be the whole ecosystem, right? You're not going to change how money works and revolutionize, hundreds of trillions of dollars with just one crypto or one company, right? It's going to take the whole ecosystem. Also, Vitalik proposes replacing the EVM, so Ethereum Virtual Machine, with RISC-V to scale Ethereum. It's pretty crazy that we're this far into it, and Ethereum still can't scale. If you look at XRP, which was the second ever crypto ever created, actually Vitalik worked at Ripple and got the idea for Ethereum when he was working at Ripple. Ripple was created after XRP, the digital asset, right? So it was Bitcoin, then XRP, and XRP was actually created by original Bitcoin developers who, they helped develop Bitcoin, and then they saw all the problems with it, right? The energy usage, it was slow and clunky, and they wanted to create, it wasn't scalable. They wanted to create a better Bitcoin. So that's when they created XRP. And then, I won't go off on the whole timeline, but then Ethereum was created, and it's crazy that Ethereum is still not scalable. And, even Bitcoin, if every person on the planet were using Bitcoin, you'd have 2 transactions in your lifetime. Like, it's not built to scale, right? You need to have these layer 2s that complement these layer 1s. Whereas like an XRP ledger and XRP itself, it's scalable already, right? And we don't need a layer 2 to make it happen. Not that there's not going to be, there's definitely going to be issues along the way, which there's some information coming here in a little bit later on in the video. But there's times where the network halts itself. But XRP, it's designed to do that. It halts itself for a reason, and it just keeps moseying on, right? It'd be bad if the network just shut down and it wasn't designed to shut down in some sort of catastrophic event or something like that, right? Also, Solana and XRP leading in ETF filings. We had one launch in Canada, spot and staking for Solana as well. There's a pending ETF in Canada as well. But we had, like I said, multiple futures-based ETFs launch, and that's typical. Usually after futures launch, spot isn't too far out. After that, I would say in the next month or two, we should get Solana and XRP ETFs approved. So XRP and Solana currently leading the ETF race. I would have to agree. It's probably a toss-up. Curious to hear. Let me know in the comments which one do you think we're going to see first. I'll go with XRP, but you never know. It's not going to be a big deal in my opinion. Like I don't think there's going to be that much demand for Solana compared to XRP. Solana ETF was approved first in Canada, spot ETF. So, maybe the US follows suit. But again, I do think that XRP is going to dwarf the volumes that we're going to see with Solana. But, I think they'll both be successful. Also, Trump Media and Crypto.com and Yorkville America Digital finalize agreement for ETF launch. So this is more mainstream adoption. You literally have some of the biggest names in the world getting into crypto, and there's some more information coming to other big names getting into the space in just a moment. Ripple was Trump's inauguration's top crypto donor before the SEC regulatory shift. Now we know why. More than likely, they were meeting with Trump and having dinner, and CEOs and the CEO, chief legal officer, all these executives at Ripple meeting with Trump, right? As they all want the campaign money, and that's why they like the private sector so much, is because they give them a lot of money. Ripple's XRP ETF approval poised to catapult XRP bulls to never before seen levels. I would agree. Just think about it. I think there's 18 ETF filings. When 18 ETFs are actually buying, when you're buying this ETF, they have to actually buy the underlying asset and have it in reserve. It's going to be insane. Like, we're already seeing, the supply be like, it's dwindling on exchanges. Just imagine when we're 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years into multiple ETFs, right? There's 18 like right now. So there'll probably be a lot more than that globally. I think that's just in the SEC. So there's probably going to be like 20 or 30, maybe even more in the next year or two. And like I said, you're going to continue to see adoption in other, parts of the world, and you're going to bring TradFi, traditional finance, into this sector. And like I said, with all these ETFs, it's going to be like $10, $20 on XRP will be just an absolute slam dunk. Like I can't see, like even $100 would be pretty doable at that point. But is it happening this cycle, next cycle? I'm probably gonna go with next cycle. Also, Dutch Bank, ING, who I've done some work with in the past, reported to be working on a stablecoin. So, like I said, every bank, more than likely, all these big banks like Bank of America already said it would have a stablecoin as well, and they're more than likely going to work with people like Ripple who can issue stablecoins. They just issued the RLUSD, and everything will just be seamless, right? And it'll basically be free. And these stable coins, which the Scott Bessent, I think it was, in the new administration in the U.S. said that we're going to cement the dollar's world reserve currency using stable coins. And that's another thing too, right? It's kind of like a spot ETF. When you buy the stable coin, the stable coin issuer has to hold in reserves pegged 1-to-1 of US dollar cash and cash equivalents. So usually in the form of T-bills, right? So when people from around the world have a cell phone and they buy USDC or they buy RLUSD or PYUSD, like PayPal's stablecoin, all of that, those stablecoins and those purchases around the globe, those issuers have to buy equivalent of US dollars, right? So it's propping up the value. It's awesome. I knew this right from day one, right? It's obvious. Also, Musk pledges Tesla comeback and keeps Bitcoin strategy steady despite Q1 miss. So they did have a pretty big miss, but stock wasn't too rattled by it. We do have a bearish pattern on that chart, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little bit more weakness on Tesla here in the short to medium term. But Bitcoin flips Google and silver to become the 5th most valuable global asset. And you still have some people in the world who are confused. They're just dazed and confused. They have no idea how this magic internet money has any value. I had somebody reach out to me and say, it's pretty stupid that the MJ industry, which are real businesses and are like generating cash, are in the dumps and they're not considered valuable at all. But Bitcoin and crypto, which is backed by nothing, like the US is getting behind it in full force. And you have to remember, what is the US dollar backed by? Nothing. They took it off the gold standard. So it only has value because we say it has value. So, and you're comparing a currency, right, a commodity, to a company. That doesn't make any sense. It's like comparing the US dollar to the MJ industry, right, or to like Amazon. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's a monetary system. And the only reason why they have value is because we say they have value. Same thing with the US dollar. It's not backed by anything, right? So, but at the end of the day, if enough people said, hey, we don't think that this thing has value, then it wouldn't have any value. That's just the long and short of it. But the crypto industry, look, it's bigger already than Google and silver, right? So it's going to be massive. We're basically in 1990 compared to the internet, right? Like we've got 10 to 20 years of mass adoption and explosion coming. So we're still so early, it's not even funny. And we're talking $100 trillion like total addressable market, right? Whereas MJ stocks, certain stocks, right, especially MJ stocks, they'll be lucky to get to a collective sector of 1 trillion, just 1 trillion, right? Crypto's already in the trillions, and we're not even really at critical mass yet. So we're getting there, but still a lot of work to do. Also, Trump to host exclusive dinner for top Trump meme coin holders, and the token jumped over 70% as a result. We'll see. There's been some interesting names on there. Also, the XRP Ledger SDK was compromised by backdoor exploit. It was a critical security flaw that was discovered in the XRP Ledger's JavaScript toolkit, and some of the versions modified to steal private keys. But there was an urgent patch that was released. Again, some people get freaked out by this. Is this the end of the world? There's always going to be unforeseen circumstances. Why do you think Microsoft updates your computer with Windows updates sometimes daily, right? If not weekly, monthly, bare minimum? It's because nobody can plan for everything. And, there's always a new threat coming, right? So the fact that it was identified and it was urgently patched, that's all that matters, right? Nothing's going to be perfect from day one. We don't live in a perfect world, okay? So CME Group plans to debut XRP futures on May 19th. Coinbase also brought derivatives. I think I mentioned that in the last video. I can't remember. PayPal and Coinbase Speaking of Coinbase, they expand partnership to innovate PYUSD, so PayPal's stablecoin solutions with zero fees. So love to see that. Like I said, we're moving into a world where there's barely any friction, which, over the last decade or two, that's been all that the industry has been met with, right? The finance industry, there's so much friction, right? If you want to send a cross-border payment, it takes 5 to 7 business days. There's no transparency. You don't know where it is when it's going there. You don't know what the rate's going to be whenever it gets there. You don't know if it's even going to get there at all. There's some transfers that just get lost. Like, it's pretty crazy that we're in 2025 and this is still the case. And then exorbitant fees, right? Say you're sending money back home to someone in the Philippines or Africa, and your family is really depending on that money. Well, if you're paying 5 to 10% of that money, sometimes more in fees, that's quality of life that could have been improved and not enriching these global corporations. But these global corporations are okay with having less profits on a per transaction basis. You might be saying, well, why would they want to lower their fees? They're getting paid tons of money. But what would happen is they would bring financial inclusion, and they would bring, I think there's 2 billion people in the world that are underbanked. So if you bring in, with the help of Starlink, right, you get free internet in rural areas, or really cheap internet in certain aspects of the world where it wasn't otherwise possible. They don't have a bank account, so they can't afford the fees for a bank account, but they have a mobile phone. They can get Starlink, sometimes free, and then just buy a stable coin, right? Or buy a crypto. And there you go. And then you charge a fee on that, right? So you're bringing in 2 billion people into the new financial system. So they'll make up their money. Don't worry. Also, the US SEC approves ProShares Trust XRP ETF, futures ETF. So saw a lot of people talking about this today. There was a US spot ETF approved. Nope, that's not what it was. It was a futures-based ETF. Again, we've seen this time and time again where they launch futures, and then shortly after, it's the spot. So I would say over the next month or two, we should see spot ETFs rolling out in the US. All right, going in it there. Let me know what you think of this news. It's Rod with Power Group. Thanks again for joining us in the Pursuit of Wealth, and we'll catch you on the next one.